Welcome to a map-based Warhammer Fantasy Battles campaign. This is the second episode. If you haven't watched the first, you might wanna, basically. We've got 3 roads down here. The Broman Empire has decided to do away with the Vampire Lord. This is Lord Blanc, calls Castle Gallagher his home. And the Bromans have had enough of all that undead nonsense. These are the forces available to Lord Blanc. Well, kind of. He's got 3 Thralls, a necromancer, and himself. He also has 20 skeleton spearmen and 15 zombies. Away from home, he's got a band of direwolves and a couple of bat swarms. He is opposed by General Samout Nenarip, and the general has got 2 wizards. He's got a really good high priest. He's got a battle wizard, Neil McGram, and then he's got 3 captains, as you can see. We do have a couple of other characters. We have 4 bannermen. We have 4 champions. We do not have any musicians because, frankly, I don't have any in my collection. Got a couple of great cannons. What is this? 36 archers, 20 swordsmen, and 100 spearmen, and that's who's going up against this. Now, this might not seem like a whole lot of guys, but bear in mind, the undead are recruiting as they go. When the campaign starts, the Bromans are going to be coming up from the south, and the 3 Thralls, and potentially the Necromancer King himself, Lord Blanc, will be able to march down, and they're going to be recruiting from these little nodes here on the road network. A B is a barrow, where there are 10 to 20 skeletons, and you can go once a week. Only once a week. Every 7 days, it regenerates, but you have to get a Thrall or a Necromancer or the Vampire Lord himself. The little Z is a cemetery where you can recruit zombies. We do have some, what do you call those things? Banshees up here in Wiggly Hill. And as I said, down here in Jaycock Wood, we've got a bunch of bats and dire wolves. I think that's it. Oh, there are 4 trolls down here. We'll talk about those guys in a minute. They start the game off neutral, and which side they fight for is going to be kind of random. Obviously, they're a little closer to the Bromans, so the Bromans will have the first shot at recruiting those trolls. That's a little bit of a wild card. Really complex situation here. We do have a lost chapel where there's a magic item. If the Bromans want to pause and march cross-country and waste a lot of time recovering that artifact, they can, but they might want to hurry because there is a time limit. The longer they wait, the more forces will be available to the Vampire Count, or Vampire Lord, I should say. It's, is he a Count? Yeah, he's Lord Blanc, and then he's got Count Diob Zala is his necromancer. All right. Now the question is, well, now that we know kind of what forces are available to them, what strategies are they going to follow? We are going to have to sit down after we figure out those strategies and figure out, well, how are we going to organize our forces? Do we put both cannons in one army? No, because I only own 1 army. So because they have, where is it? Here's our Romans. Because we have 2 great cannons, if we wind up with 3 forces, only 2 of them are going to get the cannons. We've only got 2 spellcasters. One of those forces is going to be without a spellcaster. But we'll appoint those based on the strategies that we've developed. When you're running a solo campaign like this, it is in your best interest to develop those strategies independently of each other and simultaneously. In other words, come up with 3 strategies for the zombies, come up with 3 strategies for the good guys, and absent knowing what the other side is going to do. And it's really in your interest to write those down to make it harder for you to cheat. So what I've got are 3 strategies for the Bromans and 3 for the Vampire. And the Bromans have 1 strategy where they have a half blitz left. And that, what I mean by half is half their forces. They're going to take half their army, and they're going to just sweep up and make a play for Camp Gallagher. I'm sorry, I should say Castle Gallagher. Once Castle Gallagher falls, the spell is broken, and the curse is lifted from the land. So that's the ultimate goal, take Castle Gallagher. Then we've got 2 other forces, 2 and 3, and we can say, oh, you know what? Well, we'll take half of what's left over, so a quarter of the army will creep steadily up, and half will creep steadily up here, and we'll slowly knock out these recruitment points. If the Bromans spend a full day on these nodes, they will no longer be available to the Vampire to be able to recruit from that location. And again, it's only those 5 characters that can recruit from there. So that's the first is, do we send half the army up, just race as fast as possible before the Count can get his forces in order? Number 2 is a clean sweep. We're going to split the forces into 3 equal parts, and we're just going to slowly move up, and we're going to knock out each of these nodes as we go, and we'll cross the 3 bridges. 1 army crosses the north, 1 crosses the south, and 1 crosses the center. That one's pretty easy. And then the other one is going to be hold left. We're going to send 1 army up to this area and just secure that border. Because one thing we do for kind of the easy way to manage supply lines is that if obviously the undead don't have to worry about supplies. That's good for them. The humans do have to. The Bromans need to ensure that they can draw an unbroken line back to one of these points. If they can't draw that unbroken line, in other words, if the Necromancer can park armies, if he can secure these two bridges and then get around behind you here, he can starve you out. So to prevent that, what we're going to do is we're going to have one of our forces kind of hold this left line and preserve the supply lines, while the other two forces bum rush right. And they're going to take, well, in this case, we're going to put a quarter of our forces here and then half of what's left over, so 3/8. And they're going to march up these two lines, probably converge in here, and then split up and march over that way. At that point, we may bring this holding line down to secure the flanks. All right? So that's the three choices for the Bromans. For Lord Blanc, he can do a nice steady march. He's going to defend everything north of the Quirk River. He'll send one Thrall along this line, he'll send one Thrall up north, and he'll send one kind of marching down this way. So we've got 3 even forces. We can do as much damage as possible to the forces we meet, and then we can kind of consolidate on a second line. We'll pull the Necromancer, maybe we'll hold him, the Necromancer, maybe we'll hold him back, or after those 3 set out and a week has passed, we'll bring the Vampire Lord himself, and we'll leave the castle empty and trust to our armies in the field, and he can sweep back around and pick up a lot more forces, and that way win the war of attrition. That's number 1, so we're calling that the steady march. For number 2, we're going to do a blitz left. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to bring our speedy wolves and bats, are going to race over to the left. We're going to pick up everything we can in this area, and we're going to race down in this direction. And hopefully cut off those supply lines, while our other 2 forces, they won't be quite as strong and they won't be moving as fast. They can hold the area around Geacock Woods. Then we have, so that's the second one. And then the third is we're going to have one blitz right. We'll have one army kind of come down over here and hold the line here on the left. We'll have one army kind of come down in the center and hold this area here. Maybe we'll bring them around this way. But we'll hold this area here as a reserve force, and we'll send a quick strike force down. Just pick up the forces along this line. We'll send the dire wolves and the bats in with them, and we'll just hit whoever is coming up along this way. We'll try to hold this area over here, take a little more time, pick up as many forces as we can, and have a stronger force on the left, and that gives us the flexibility to adjust to where the big threat is. I think the road network probably works a little bit better for the undead. Also, the undead don't have to rest once a week. As men of God, the Broman Empire, they take Sunday off. And part of that is just the physical reality of the world. We are built by a man, by a god who worked 6 days and took the 7th off. We work for 6 days and take the 7th off. Our bodies begin to break down. So when we measure out our actual movement, and we will use 1/4 inch is 5 miles. I think that's what we typically do. Armies can march, I think it's 1/2 mile per day, depending on the weather. We also need to figure out when the Bromans are going to launch this crusade. But that is a story for shortly. Now, I think we're ready to roll some dice. I've got a green for the undead, right? Green for the zombies, and I've got yellow for the Bromans, because they have well, I have some here. Yeah, look. Here's what our Broman figure looks like. There's our cavalry. So yellow and then green for the zombies. So we get a 4 and a 5, and if we look at that, it means the Bromans are going to do a clean sweep, nice, steady, even forces moving up the field, and our bad guys are going to do 1 blitz right, 1 hold left, and 1 reserve force. So now we can look at the map, and we can actually name what those 3 armies are going to be for each of our forces. I probably should have been explicit that left and right is the west and the east as we're looking at the map. For the undead, they're going to send a reserve force. We're going to call that force Desdemona. Going to sweep up here, grab a unit of Banshees up at Wiggly Hill, and come back down this way. By the time they get this far, this point, already having been swept up by Force Banquo, will be ready to be recruited again. In fact, we may be able to come back down here and grab some zombies. And we may, you know what, let's say every week that we wait, we get an additional, well, maybe what we could do is roll some dice to see what else is summoned to Castle Gallagher. But we'll deal with that in a second. I just want to go over the strategies. So we got Force Desdemona kind of sweeping around and making a reserve force here. Once they get down, we'll reanalyze where we're at in a strategic situation. Force Banquo is our blitzing force, and it's going to sweep along here. It's going to pick up our wolves and our bats and come down to confront whichever of these armies, Cherub or Seraph, is in this area. And then we have Force Julius, who is going to bypass. We'll give Banquo the forces from this barrow mound. Julius is basically going to be able to pick up these three and just hold this area here. Maybe if it's not a huge, it's mostly zombies and skeleton. If there's not a lot, we may send the vampire count out with, half of his locals in the castle to reinforce this point. This might not be a fair campaign. It might be a total, bum rush and unfair in favor of the Bromans. I'm okay with that. This is largely an experiment. We're just seeing what would happen in this situation. I tried to keep it as fair as possible, but in a complex situation like this, there are hidden factors that we didn't anticipate. Looking now at the Bromans, we've got three forces. Force Cherub, of course, is going to come up here, and slow but steady wins the race. That's actually going to give the undead a little bit more time. I'm going to spend a day knocking out this barrow. We'll come up and we'll spend a day talking to the trolls. Force Seraph is going to knock out this graveyard and then this barrow, and then finally make it up to the Quirk River. And then Force Archangel is going to come up along this line and knock these out. So the rear will be entirely secure. We won't have to worry about any recruiting going on down here. Once the fighting starts, if a Thrall slips around behind one of our forces, we won't have to worry about him picking up additional barrows or graveyards to add to his forces. Bear in mind that during the course of the battles, our leaders for the undead will be summoning additional undead through the course of the battle, which gives them an additional recruitment point. For the Bromans, that doesn't happen. Like this force, what you see is what you get. There is one other thing to be aware of, and that's that where any figure that is destroyed on the part of the undead is destroyed forever. For the Bromans, any figure that falls, we have to figure out whether that figure that's eliminated from the battle is dead and out of the campaign. Is it wounded and has to take a week to recover from its injuries? Or is it recruited and, well, I guess you could say, is it turned into a skeleton or a zombie to fight for the Necromancer Lords? That's another way that we may wind up balancing this situation that I'm not quite sure. I haven't sat down and run the points available to both sides, but I don't think I have to. So we may make that available to kind of balance things out as well. We do have a couple of questions to answer for the forces of undead. Which of these three forces are we going to send the Necromancer with? Necromancer. It's necro, not necro. Some people get really annoyed with that. We've got three forces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which one? Oh, we said we were going to blitz down. We got to put them with Banquo. So leading with our best foot forward, this will be our king. Now, the question is, do we come out of the castle with our big boss? And we're not going to do that yet. I'm just going to arbitrarily declare that by fiat. We're going to see how the first battle goes. He's a fairly conservative guy. Let's just see what happens, okay? The second thing that we do is, now we got to talk about the Bromans. The first question is, who does General Sam outmarch with? Is it going to be Archangel, Seraph, or Cherub? Oh, and I should actually designate. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Archangel, and you got to say that, right? This is why it's better to write it down. So General Sam out is going to be marching with Force Archangel. Then our captains, we're just going to go 1, 2, 3. It'll be Captain Alessitor and Captain Thorn and Captain Legan with Force Cherub. But we do have a priest and a battle wizard. So the question is, which one of these will the high priest march with? And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. So the high priest, wow, we're going really strong here. High priest. And then, what about that other wizard? Seraph or Cherub? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. So our wizard will be marching here. Then I've got 2 great cannons. So the question is, which of these forces will not be receiving a cannon? And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2. So our cannons are going to go with Seraph and Cherub. And look at that. Suddenly our strategy now, this is all happening randomly, And then we go back and we justify, well, why did we put the cannon here? It turns out our equal forces are largely going to be on the flanks, and we're going with a slightly weaker center. You can also see that through the course of the campaign, because we're marching with a cannon, they're marching a little slower. This is going to, by default, wind up being our reserve force, just because of the natural condition of the way things go. All right, then we have a total of 3 archers, so we're just going to put 1 unit of archers with each of these forces. We've got 2 units of swordsmen. And I think we're going to call those, we're going to bump them up just a little bit. These will be those heavily armored swordsmen. If you look at the, let me grab my, there we go. I'm only using the Ravening Horde supplement. And if you look at this for the Empire, I was looking at this a little more closely the other day. They have these rare units, and in the past, I have used the guys with the big swords, but they don't have a whole lot of staying power. Yeah, great swords. And those guys have, they may have light armor, but my figures are all fairly heavily armored. So I'm going to call them Reichsguards. And we're going to give them the hand weapon, the heavy armor, and shield. Even though you're only allowed 0 to 1 unit of Reichsguard, that's okay because I've only got 2 units in the entire force. So somebody's going to go without, and let's find out who that's going to be. And it's going to be 5. So we're going to do our swords and our swords. And then we've got a total of 10 units of spearmen. In other words, are we going to go with, so we can go 3, 3, and 3, and who gets the extra batch of swordsmen? That's what's going to happen on a roll of a 1, 2, 3. On a roll, well, no, that's exactly how we're going to do it. Who gets the extra 10 spearmen? These guys get extra spears. Extra spears. And there you go. Now you've got your rosters. We do have 4 bannermen and 4 champions, so we'll give 1 unit of each, and those are guys, they go with the spears. So the question then becomes, who gets the extra bannerman and champion? I've only got 2 banners, so each force can only wield 2 of them. 5. And then these extra spears also get the banner and champion. Times 2. There will be 1 banner and champion with each of the spear forces here. But look, now we know what this unit looks like. We are going to have, and this is going to be a slightly awkward edit. I completely forgot. I've got 2 units of knights. I've got a unit of the Knights of the Lamb, and I've got another unit. I can't remember what they're called. The Knights of the Lamb are the, let me pull my Ravening Hordes out here so I can kind of show you. I've already worked through these first couple of weeks, but I don't know why, I completely spaced on the Knightly Orders and the Knights of the White Wolf. I call them the Knights of the Lamb. So what we're going to do is we got to put, I got 10 of these guys and 10 of these Knightly Orders. So I got to figure out which of these forces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the Knights of the Lamb. 5, 6. So they're going to be over here on the eastern side, and the Knightly Order, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. So we got knights on either side, and this is kind of the weaker force, it looks like. But look, now we know what this unit looks like. We are going to have an army that has 1 captain. It's got a cannon, a unit of swordmen, a unit of archers, and about 40 spearmen. So that's probably about 600 points, I want to say, 600 to 700 points. And that's the smallest of our units. Over here, it'll be a wizard, a cannon, archers, 40 spearmen with a, well, so we have 2 units of spearmen over here, 2 units of 20, each of which has a banner and a champion. Again, you're looking at about 700 to 800 points. And then over here, I think this is going to be a little bit more expensive simply because we've got the high price general and the high priest and a captain, so 3 characters. This is probably the strongest force we've got. Interestingly enough, they're going to be going up against, when they cross the bridge out of the Falimatok swamp, they're going to be facing this kind of reserve holding force that's probably going to park here in the barrow and just wait. So the fact that we're taking our time means we're going to be facing at least 1, maybe 2 extra, 20 to 40 extra skeletons. It'll be interesting to see how they complete that. Now that we have our armies available to us, 3 Thralls, we know what our strategies are for each side, we can move on to the next step, which is moving around the map. And to do that, I'm going to tap into William Sylvester's The Solo Wargaming Guide. I don't know if you knew this or not, but you don't have to use Games Workshop books to play a Games Workshop campaign. And the first question I have to ask, and again, it's going to be a random question, is, well, when are we starting this crusade? What is the date that we launch? And I've got a D12 die, which is convenient because there are 12 months in the year. March. I also have a 30-sided die. Let's find out what day in March. Now, if it was February, we would just re-roll a 29 or 30. If it was August, we would just, okay, we never start on the 31st. It's a bad omen. But in this case, I roll the die, and look at that. March 5th will be the starting day for our, I'll put a little note here, 3-5. And that's really important because we have to worry about weather. And there's a whole lot of preliminary stuff in here. I've done a couple of campaigns using this book. It's a really good book. But this is the two charts that I get the most use out of, to be honest with you, are the movement chart, which looks a little something like this. And it talks about when you're moving on poor roads or good roads, if you're moving through light woods, how fast you can move. And roads are such a speed boost that most people move across roads all the times. You cannot cross this river, period. There's a stream here that when you move to it, you spend a full day crossing the stream. And if you're attacked while you're crossing the stream, oh man, we could have some fun with that. The point is, I see, and I write right in my book here. There we go. So we're starting in March. We're starting in March. And there is a possibility of fog, heavy rain, light rain, and even a slim chance of snow in March. Starting on March 1st. Now, we got to roll 2d6 to find out which of these boxes we start in. And we start in box 8. So on March 5th, we're going to start in this box right here. And then what we do is we roll a d6. And every time we roll a 1 or a 2, we move up a box. And every time we roll a 3 or a 4, we hold still. And every time we roll a 5 or a 6, we move down a box. And that way, you have these nice, wonderful trends of, clear skies. And then once it starts raining and then it gets cold, you have a very good chance of being stuck in the snow. If you can roll like 4 or 5 snow days in a row, all you got to do is roll a 3 or a 4, 3 or 4 times. And over time, you then have to go and look at this chart over here to find out how this slows you down. All right. One thing I'll point out is that we do have a unit of bats that is going to be immediately moving to coordinate with the army marching down this center road. We also have a unit of dire wolves. Bats, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, they can fly. So they don't have to worry about any terrain effects. However, we may decide that if it's, you know what we'll say though, in heavy rain, they cannot fly. They don't move in heavy rain. Snow, I guess we can, but not heavy rain. Likewise, the wolves, I hadn't thought about this until just now. How do wolves move? See, the breakdown for movement here is infantry, artillery, horse artillery, and cavalry. And I think we'll declare that wolves move as cavalry, and we'll give them, because they're dire wolves, we'll give them the extra days boost where they can move 7 days a week. The mounts, the humans down here, like I said, they can only move 6 days at a time. To help keep things neat and orderly and ensure that we don't forget any of the multiple steps along our path to this campaign, we're just going to take it 1 week at a time. That means I have to roll 7 times on this chart. I rolled an 8 to start with in March. So we know on the 5th, so we need to figure out what the weather is going to be like through the 12th. So on the 6th, we roll the d6 and the weather stays in that box. And then we roll a 5 and that means we move down. So on the 7th, it's still clear skies. We're right there. And then on the 8th, we move back up. On the 9th, we hold steady. On the 10th, we move back up. And on the 11th, we move back up. So we're there on the 11th. We have one more day. What does it look like on the 12th? We move back up. So we'll put a little 312 right there. So we remember what the weather was like on the 12th. And it's clear skies clear through the 12th. All right, well, that makes it a little bit easy, but there's one other thing I want to do before I start shoving armies around the map. And for that, I turn to Henry Hyde's Wargaming campaigns. Old Donald Featherstone, way back in the day, he came up with this brilliant concept of chance cards. And this is a really good book. I highly recommend it. If you don't have the time or inclination to make a full deck of random events of your own, Henry Hyde's got you covered with what he calls his random effects table. We're going to roll on this table 2 times. The first roll will be for the Bromans. The second roll will be for the undead. And it's a percentile roll with all kinds of good effects. If you're below 25 or under, that's a bad thing for you. If you're 76 or higher, that means you get a little bonus. And of course, if you're anywhere in the middle, so half the time, you're not even going to have a random event. And when you do, half the time it's good, half the time it's bad, but probably a little bit less than that, because in some cases, these are really not relevant for us. In the case where it says, oh, heavy range, you can't cross any streams. All right, well, the only stream we've got here is Nuala Stream, which has 3 fords across it. So there's a chance that we have a week where, due to flooding, and I mean, it is March, right? So the spring melt means that you can't cross the stream at all. Now, you can never cross the river, except the bats, because they fly. But that is one potential for these. And in a lot of cases where you've got things like, oh, your supply lines broke down. Well, if that's the undead, they don't have supply lines. So we do have a few judgment calls to make in this. It's a complicated situation. It's fine. And that's enough talking. Let's roll the dice and see what our Broman random event is. 93. That's a random little Benny, I think. 93 reads, Windfall. The monarch is in a generous mood and grants a pay bonus for the troops. Morale is increased by +1 in any encounter this week, and if your campaign includes political aspects, the popularity of the government monarch increases, though at the risk of antagonizing any opposition parties who accuse the government of profligacy. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of politics in ours. We have a +1 morale boost, which probably won't do us much good because I doubt we're going to get into any combat this turn, but we'll write that down anyway. We'll say Broman's +1 morale, and I think that would translate to a +1 to the morale for all of the warriors, like in the tabletop battles fought this week. For the undead, our random event will be a 64, which puts us right in the heart of no effect. That's fine. We can live with that. After our first week, and I put little tick marks down, on the 5th, Force Archangel winds up here. They can move at 3/4 of an inch, that's 15 miles a day, along good roads. Everyone is hampered by the presence of foot troops and cannons in some cases. So 5, 6, 7, 8 to get to this graveyard, and then on the 9th, so on day 5, they camp here, day 6, 7, 8 to get there, then 9 is when they actually trounce that. So the 10th would put them here, and I guess they got one more day out of it. I completely forgot. All right, so they're going to wind up right here on the 11th, and then on the 12th, remember, that's their day of rest. Let me just mark this down so it's a little easier to keep track. So this is Archangel winds up right here, and they're making pretty good progress. We've got 4, likewise, Seraph on the 5th, and then on the 6th, and then they spend the 7th wiping out this graveyard, 7. So then on the 8th, 9th, 10th, and on the 11th, on the 5th they march to here, on the 6th to here, we'll give it to them. They'll actually trounce this cemetery on the 7th, then they march up on the 8th, 9th, on the 10th they march to here, on the 11th they'll trounce it, and then they're going to be stuck here, camped in this barrow on the 12th. So they'll be able to set out on the 13th, that Monday, headed up this way. The last group is Force Cherub, and this is with our Wizard in our cannon. They come up here on the 5th. On the 6th, they get to this barrel. They trash it on the 7th. 8, and then the way I'm doing the bridges here is that you halt movement there for the day, however far away you are. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 gets them over the bridge. We're going to ignore the trolls. They're bad guys if the zombies can get to them. And then on the 10th and on the 11th, they can get to this barrow. But on the 12th, they have to rest before they knock this barrow out. So that's going to be Force Cherub. That's where they wind up. If we take a look at what happened to our zombies and our undead, we can follow along in the same manner. Now, what I did is I said the Thralls are mounted on cavalry. They're mounted on horses, not battle horses. They fight on foot. But what that does is it allows them to more quickly get into position to recruit that first unit. And as you can see, the Force Desdemona, he is able to make it to this cemetery in one day. And then his rate slows down because he's hampered by the presence of 10 to 20 zombies. We have to roll for these, and we'll get to that in a second. So essentially, he is going to wind up having, he's going to hit 2 by the time we get to the end of the week. And he's going to wind up right here. Force Desdemona is at this barrow, and we have recruited 1 force of zombies, 1 force of banshees, and 1 force of skeletons. A nice rounded force, but we got to figure out exactly how many they have. And it's not quite as cut and dried as I thought. The banshees is pretty easy. On a 1 through 5, there'll be 1 stand of banshees, and anything else, there you go. So we got 2 stands of banshees, and we can just change this right here on the map. So Desdemona now has 2 stands of banshees. The zombies is easy. They get 10 zombies plus another D10. So they're going to wind up with 18 zombies in this force. But now the skeletons get a little more complicated than I indicated earlier in the video, because there's a chance that they could recruit grave tomb guards. And I think that the tomb guards are from the Khemri unit, but that's okay. I want to have it just a little bit more random and fun. Grave guards is what it is. So we roll a d6, and on a roll of a 6, instead of getting a whole bunch of regular zombies, we're going to get 10 of the superpowered grave guards. We didn't get it, so that means it is going to be just the 10 extra skeletons. So 17 skeletons, and now we know exactly how many forces are in this little unit. It's going to be 17 skeletons, 18 zombies, and 2 banshees, plus our thrall who will be commanding them. But we're not done yet. That's just what they've accumulated so far. When we pick up the action, we're going to have to figure out, oh, they're going to be marching down this way based on our recruiting strategy. And it's the 13th. Bear in mind, Force Banquo recruited this barrow. Oh, I forgot to write the day down. So he sets out on the 5th. He recruits on the 6th. On the 13th, meaning by the time this army gets back down to this barrow, Force Desdemona will be able to recruit here again. And instead of just having the 17 skeletons, it's a good bet they're going to have anywhere from 30 to 40 skeletons. Continuing along the thought, Force Banquo actually hits 2 of these. So we have to roll 2d6, and on a result of a 6, we get Grave Guards. That is a 3, so we don't. So we're going to have 20, and we'll roll 2d10, and we get an additional, well, that's a 1 and a 7, so that's going to mean Force Banquo is going to have a total of 28 skeletons in the force, at least if they were attacked today. Bear in mind, and this is where they wind up. Bear in mind, they are also going to pick up the bats and the dire wolves. So I think we're just about ready to, it's 3 bats, 12 dire wolves. So this is a much stronger force, and they are headed for battle with these guys. The Force Cherub is going to be marching up this way, and it looks like they're going to have one more unit of zombies joining their force. So these guys are going to get, Banquo is even going to be tougher than I expected. Remember that Force Seraph down here is lagging way behind, but they'll be able to follow up. If Force Banquo wins, they're probably going to run down and recruit these trolls. They're just going to keep getting stronger as the battle goes on. So this first battle might really indicate the direction of the campaign. But we're still not done, because Force Julius here ignored this barrow, left it for Fort Banquo. He winds up, the Thrall who's in charge here, winds up here at the end of day 5. At the end of day 6, and then on day 7, he runs down to this zombie. He recruits 10 plus a d10, so that's going to be 16 zombies for Force Julius. And I guess I'll write that up here. 16 zombies. And this node is available for recruiting on the 15th again. And then he comes up and he recruits more skeletons at this barrow. And no tomb guards. And it's just 11 there. So a little random there. 16 zombies, 11 skeletons. This is a rather smallish force. But remember, we're going to recruit more skeletons, and we'll probably be able to get back to here. And we're going to hold before these guys, Force Archangel, makes it up to do battle. So it's going to be a little bit stronger than you expected. And remember, we do still have all of the forces of Castle Gallagher. That's another 20 skeletons and 15 zombies, plus the big general there. So we may do like a 1-2 punch in that direction. And, of course, Force Desdemona can follow up as well. So that's the end of the first week. That's where things stand. And I think we have time. Let's take a look at what happens in the second week. And this is why I make the little note for what the weather was like on the 12th, because we resume rolling our D6s for the weather chart from this box right here. And I'm just going to roll 7 more times. We get a, oh, that's helpful. That was a 3, so we stay in the box on the 13th. We stay in the box on the 14th. I'm just looking to see where we get to. That is a 4, so we stay again. And then finally with a 6, we drop down. So that was the 12, 13, 14. That's the 15th. We're 1 box below. On the 16th, we move back up. We're going to the 19th. 17, stay there. 18, we move back up. And then on the 19th, on day 3, we're going to hold steady. So here's where our weather is on the 19th. If next week starts off with a roll of a 1 or a 2, then we are going to experience at least 1 day of light rain. So we're finally getting to the point that weather might come into play. But the omens were correct. We had 2 weeks of good weather to start the campaign. Now we got to roll for our random events. Starting with the Bromans, 66, no events. And for the undead, a 24 is one not good thing. Forest fire, dry weather followed by lightning has caused extensive forest and brush fires. Your opponent may select any area of forest. No troops may approach within a hex distance for D3 turns. We'll call that days. And any troops within the area must leave immediately to reach safety. Any supplies are lost to see if they're destroyed. I don't think that matters for us. If we take a look at our map, the only place that we have... Oh, here we go. Actually, our force is stuck right next to Jaycock Woods. So the way we'll rule that is that for D3 days, this force cannot move. So for 1 day, in other words, on the 13th, Force Banquo has to stay here because they're blinded or I don't know, the smoke gets in their eyes. That'd be good. That'd be a good song. Nah, it'd never sell. Anyway, so that is the one random event, Forest Fires, and it doesn't have a huge effect. But, depending on the situation, some of these can be game changers, and some of them are just quirky little things. So that's the big thing to remember is Force Banquo has to take a day off, just like the undead. So let me pause it, and we'll figure out where we are at the end of the week, or alternatively, where our first battle occurs. Our first battle will occur on the 16th, right here at this cemetery. Walk you through that. Remember that our Force Cherub rested in this area. On the 12th, they took care of this barrow. They blessed it and cleaned it using the Wizard of Light. And then on the 13th, 14th, let's see, that was actually, the 12th was a day of rest. The 13th, they cleaned it. 14th, 15th, put them right here. Meanwhile, Force Banquo is coming down here, and they are able to, oh, look, if they pause, so they remember that because of the forest fire, on the 13th, they didn't move. On the 14th, they moved to here, and on the 15th, zombies became available, so they stopped. They took out the zombies, and what this tells us is that Force Cherub is going to be the attacker, and they're going to be attacking a cemetery that is being defended by Force Banquo. So we'll put a little note here. And what I did is I just, because this is getting so cluttered with all the notes, I went onto another page and I said, what's the status as of 3:16? And here it is. It'll be Banquo versus Cherub with Cherub on the attack. And I'll make a little note of that as well. Attacking cemetery. But that's on the 16th. So I actually did go through and I checked out what other people are doing. Seraph is going to be able to make it up to right about here on the 18th, and then on the 19th, they'll wind up resting right here. But I didn't put that down here yet because we need to get through the second week. Things get a little more complicated on this side as well, because after blessing this barrow, Force Archangel moves all the way up, and they're going to stop right here. But just to kind of give you a little preview, Force Julius, the undead, they sweep up, recruit here. They had just completed recruiting here. This barrel will become available on the 19th. So they're going to march over. And remember that they are holding this area. On the 18th, they'll be here, and you know what we should do? We should call, now that I think about it, we're going to call these poor roads through the swamp. There's some kind of causeway, but we'll slow down our travel through the swamp and treat these roads as poor. That gives this just a little bit more interest, and that slows down Force Archangel. And basically what it means is, by camping out here for a few days, the Force Julius is going to be able to pick up one more unit of skeletons before it heads down to march. And I don't know where this battle is going to happen because of the poor roads. Clear skies, but I think that means that they march at half speed. So I have to figure that out. I had Force Archangel pausing right here. I got to look at it. So let me look at that. But that doesn't matter because this battle will happen at some point after 3:16, March 16th. And then likewise, the only other force that we haven't talked about yet is Force Desdemona, who is sweeping around. Remember, Desdemona is our linebacker. This is our reserve force. Likewise, they had just picked up this unit of skeletons. By marching down here and waiting just a day or two, they can pick up another unit of skeletons and just hang out and see what happens at these two battles. If one of these two forces should lose this battle, then we'll wind up sending Force Desdemona in that direction to try to clean up before coming back around the other side and maybe picking up some more recruits along the way, maybe bringing the vampire out. But that's looking kind of at the potential for this campaign. As things stands, it looks a little bit like this. Oh, I'm glad I went back and double-checked that. Force Archangel came up and hit this barrow, purified it, so they're actually coming up along this roadway here. And when they hit the poor roads, they go from 15 miles a day to 10 miles a day in good weather. That puts them here on the 16th. And if we just look ahead, 17, 18, and kind of late in the day, they're going to be on the bridge. They're going to be camped right here on the 19th. And just looking, if Force Julius recruits here on the 19th, that's going to put our battle somewhere in this vicinity right here on or about the 20th or 21st. I don't know what the weather is. So I can't even really look that far into the future because I've only figured out weather through the 19th. And like I said, we've got a battle for a cemetery here. See how it's all kind of natural? Oh, but there's a couple of other dice rolls I want to do just to establish a couple of things. If we go back to our kind of rough, sketchy notes here, we do have to figure out, Desdemona picked up another unit of skeletons. On a 6, it's the big boys, and it is. So it's going to be 10 of those grave guards. And then, is there anybody else that has to pick up? Yeah, we've got a unit of, and I'm just, so on the 19th we have a recruiting here. I'm going to go ahead and roll for that right now. So we're looking for 6s. We didn't get any. So it's going to be another 20 plus 7, so it's another 27 skeletons for, that puts this force at 38 skeletons on the 19th. And I'll just make a note of that Julius has 39 skeletons. So if I forget, you guys got to remind me. That's what Force Julius has on the 19th. There's really no potential, and sometimes you can kind of squint and look down the road and establish some of these things. Just get that out of the way, because it's not going to be affected by anything that the opposition force can do. So Force Julius, we really understand where they're going to be at the end of the week. And I'll put a note here that this will be on 3/19, and then on the 20th is when they'll march out. Everybody else is on the 16th here. And in fact, because again, there's very little chance for this affecting things over here for Force Julius. So if we want to figure out where Force Archangel is going to be, we can actually measure it. It will give them the free bridge crossing. It's the 16th, 17th, 18th to get across. So they're going to be camped out here on the 19th. And if they were attacked on the bridge, then we could have some fun putting together a scenario with a sole bridge crossing in the middle of the table. And then that's how you use the existing terrain from your map to influence the battlefields that you lay out. Over here, I know there's a cemetery. There may be some hills nearby. There may be some small woods. So we'll have to come up with some additional factors to figure out what the terrain looks like specifically around this node. But we've been going at this a while. I think that's pretty good. And the next time we sit down to play some Warhammer Fantasy Battle, we have a... Did I roll anything for these guys? Let me just double check and make sure I got that done here for you guys. We got the extras. Oh, they have another D20 zombies. Or not D20, but... Boy, that would have been wild, right? Another 16 zombies. So in addition to the 8 skeletons, 16 zombies. And now I've got some force rosters. And we can put some miniatures on the table, which is really the point of the exercise. Until next time, I'm praying for you.